I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember bacon makes everything better.
For the 7th time in the 71-year history of the Atlantic Coast Conference Men's Basketball Tournament, it'll be the Tar Heels and the Wolfpack. Later on tonight, right here in the district, and David Glenn, along with me, Mike Waddell. What a first year for our North Carolina Sports Network to have the Wolfpack and the Tar Heels battling it out for the most coveted prize in all of North Carolina sports.
No doubt about it, my friend. I mean, this league has been North Carolina-centric in many ways for a long time. The ACC headquarters were in Greensboro for 70 years, of course, Charlotte since last summer. And if you list the 3 schools with the most all-time ACC titles, it's Duke with 22, it's Carolina with 18 trying to make it 19, and it's the Wolfpack with 10 trying to make it 11. I mean, you can't have a more triangle-centric 71-year storybook than that. And one of those 2 is going to add to that list. This is the Tar Heels' 36th ACC title game. Remember, the league's only 71 years old, so literally Carolina's in the title game more than half the time historically, which is a crazy thing to say. Duke, not this year, but overwhelmingly has been part of this storyline as well. But you know, the old-timers will tell us when the State-Carolina rivalry was an even bigger rivalry than the Duke-Carolina rivalry that the world knows about and that the country knows about, even beyond college basketball fans. So it's just a fun angle of this 71st ACC tournament that we're kind of going back to the future, right? It's Wolfpack Tar Heels with everything on the line, and everything, of course, means an ACC championship. For the Wolfpack, everything also means whether they get into the NCAA tournament or not. The Heels know they're going. The Wolfpack needs to beat the Heels to get there.
It was in year 6 of the ACC back in 1959 when the Wolfpack first meet North Carolina for the ACC championship. That went an 80-56 Wolfpack win, and your buddy Lou was the MVP of that tournament, but he was playing for Everett Case. It wasn't the Everett Case Award at that point.
Lou Pacillo, friend of the program for sure, an amazing man to this day who lives in Raleigh and roots passionately for the Wolfpack. I haven't been able to speak with him this week, but I'd like to, because he has been a huge supporter of Kevin Keats. Coach Keats obviously is in year 7. It was a rough regular season, and they have magically turned this season around, going from losing those 7 of 9 to close the regular season to now having a chance to win 5 straight games in 5 days here in Washington, D.C. So Lou Pacillo and a lot of others with their jersey in the rafters at PNC Arena are smiling about that 4-day story. I can only imagine how much bigger those smiles will be if the Pack can not only win that first ACC title since 1987, which, by the way, in 87, it was the Heels that the Pack beat to cut down the nets that year, the great Jim Valvano team. But that was 37 years ago, right? The Wolfpack fans are like, hey, how about what have you done for me lately? So they're starving for a title. But let's remember, even though Carolina's been a historical juggernaut, the Heels have only one ACC championship since 2008. That's one in the last 16 years. So Carolina fans are a little hungry for another ACC title. They won one in 2016, but they used to crank them out several, or 3 or 4 per decade in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s. It's been a little while for the Tar Heels in one way. It's been a long while for the Wolfpack in another way.
Let's go back to the progression of these Carolina NC State title games. The next one after 1959 was in 1968. Carolina, a runaway 37-point win over the Wolfpack, 87-50. The left-hander from the Keystone State, Larry Miller, the MVP in that tournament. Phil Ford in 1975 leads the Tar Heels to a 4-point, 70-66 win in Greensboro. And then it was that 1987 team that you talk about, David, NC State with the win by 1, 68-67, and Vinny the Black, Vinny Del Negro. I mean, one of the great characters in the history of NC State basketball. and also one of the first tournaments I know that you really paid attention to as a student in the ACC.
Yeah, and one of the remarkable things, well, among the many remarkable things about that Jim Valvano, Vinny Del Negro State over Carolina victory in the '87 ACC title game is that is one of only 2 examples, Mike, in the modern era. I'm not talking about the throwback machine, but since it's been a 64/68 team NCAA tournament, so 1985 forward. That's a lot of years, right? That's almost 40 years at this point. There have only been 2 examples of a team that would have been on the wrong side of the NCAA tournament bubble coming to the ACC tournament and just winning the thing to grab the automatic bid. You want to take things out of the hands of the selection committee as they dissect at-large bids and who deserves to be in and who's not? That's the way to do it, right? Take all the judgment out of the equation. Just win the ACC tournament. You get an automatic bid. You're not part of the debate about at-large bids. In 1987, the Wolfpack did it, and it did not happen again, Mike, until 2 years ago when Virginia Tech showed up at the ACC tournament as a 7 seed, which as we speak is the lowest seed ever to win an ACC tournament. Obviously, the Wolfpack this year as a 10 seed would break that record by quite a bit. But the Hokies, Coach Mike Young, Hunter Couture was the MVP 2 years ago. Those guys were not in the NCAA tournament conversation in a good way, and they just took all the mystery out of it. They just said, in that case, 4 wins in 4 days. The number 7 seed Hokies cut down the nets, and the Wolfpack has this chance at history in a different way now. They could become – it's happened in other leagues, but it's never happened in the ACC. 5 wins in 5 days to cut down the ACC champion Nets. That's what the Wolfpack has a chance to do tonight against the Tar Heels.
And what does it say? We'll just stay right here on that 1987 championship team for Jim Valvano and the Wolfpack. That was the last relevant win that NC State had in terms of winning a championship. I was in high school, David. What would this mean to the Wolfpack Nation? Because they're a proud group. I mean, Carolina and NC State, you know, they're only 27 miles or so apart. They played in every decade for an ACC championship in 59, 68, 75, 87, 97, 2007, none in the teens, but now one in the 20s. But what would a win mean for the Wolfpack? Because they've not won a football title since 1979 under Bo Ryan, and they've not won a basketball title since that 1987 victory. I mean, this could be momentous for NC State and the pride of the overall fandom.
It's a huge deal, Mike. 1 week ago, fans of the Wolfpack were discussing whether Kevin Keatts was going to get an 8th year as the head coach of the Pack. And now the conversation is so much more positive, and everybody's talking about good luck charms and sticking together and believing in each other. And the Michael O'Connell story, a guy who was not central to the Wolfpack season early this year, and he was obviously central to that win over UVA. He's obviously been central to the turnaround of the season. Mohamed Diarra was not always a big part of the Wolfpack earlier this season. He's been a huge part of their success here at the NCAA, at the ACC tournament. But to your point, in the bigger picture, you know, we recently had Wes Moore, the outstanding NC State women's basketball coach, as a guest on the David Glenn Show in the North Carolina Sports Network. And we mentioned with him that when the Pack won those back-to-back ACC championships in women's basketball, that had broken a broader drought, right? Some people talk about the big 2 sports of football and men's basketball. Others will talk about the big 4 sports of football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and baseball. Well, as much as I love the Elliott Avent baseball program at NC State, and Wes Moore has been just a magician with the women's basketball program. NC State at times has been really good in football under Dave Doran, but also others. And there have been peaks, even under a Herb Sendek or a Mark Gottfried or whatever. Good seasons here or there. When you get to the point where you're talking about multiple decades, before Wes Moore broke through with women's basketball, they were talking about the 1979 football title. They were talking about the 1987 men's basketball title. You had to go back a similar length to the last NC State baseball title. as many games as Coach Avent has won, he has not broken through with an ACC baseball championship. So now Coach Wes Moore has done so multiple times with the women's hoops program. But back to that Big Two concept, there are a lot of fans who say, hey, baseball's nice and women's basketball is nice and wrestling is nice and cross country is nice. But come on, the world revolves around football and men's basketball. And in those two sports, those are really, really long conference title droughts. And in fact, Mike, if you just expand it to like the Power 5 conferences, NC State was on the short list of schools, is on the short list of schools that has gone the longest total time in the two sports of football and men's basketball without a conference championship. And that's a school that won 2 national championships in men's basketball in 1974 and 1983. So they have had to recalibrate. NC State fans that I knew in the 80s viewed themselves as a national championship program because of what Norm Sloan did, not just in 74 with the national title, but a lot of other success. Jimmy V, right? Not just the 83 title, that's the most important thing, but first place finishes, other NCAA tournament success. They viewed themselves as a national championship caliber program. They viewed themselves as an ACC championship caliber football program back then. Well, they've had to recalibrate because those things are so far in the rearview mirror that they've had to cherish much smaller accomplishments. So it would mean an awful lot to a lot of people. An entire generation of Wolfpack fans has grown up without ever seeing an ACC title in one of the 2 most popular sports with their own eyes. You have to be of a certain age just to remember 1987 or 1979. So this would be a seismic shift and accomplishment for the Wolfpack men's basketball program, and something that I think would just send Wolfpack Nation into a celebration unlike anything we've seen in a long, long time. The Lawson Insurance Group in Raleigh is a family-owned business led by 3 actual brothers who happen to be huge sports fans: Ken Lawson, Miller Lawson, and Michael Lawson. I know these guys, I trust these guys, and I send these guys my own insurance business and that of my family. The next time you have insurance needs, I hope you'll do the same. The Lawson Insurance Group is known for its commitment to community and its dedication to ensuring that North Carolinians and their businesses are prepared for life's inevitable challenges, with the reminder that as a high street insurance partner, Lawson Insurance Group offers local expertise and support that, combined with High Street's extensive national resources, means more choice and support for you as their client. To learn more, search Lawson Insurance Group online. The Lawson Insurance website will be the first link that pops up.
In 1997, it was a 10-point Tar Heel win under the guise of MOP, Most Outstanding Player, Shamond Williams, big old number 3, going for 3 more times than not. And then Brendan Wright led the 2007 Tar Heels to a 9.89-80 win in the last NC State North Carolina head-to-head matchup for the championship. David, let's talk about the 2 games that were played this year and the 23-24 season between the Wolfpack and the Tar Heels. When you look at that first game, it came right at the beginning of the year, and it was January 10th in Raleigh, 67-54. The Tar Heels with the win. R.J. Davis, 16 points. Harrison Ingram, 19 rebounds, and probably best known for running into mega donor for the Wolfpack, Wendell Murphy, courtside.
Yeah, I was at that game, got to ask Harrison Ingram about that on the David Glenn show. He went over to check on Mr. Murphy to make sure he was okay during a timeout a little bit later in that game. But the Wolfpack has changed so much since then. There was never a moment in that game at PNC Arena on January 10th that I believe the Wolfpack had a real chance to win it. That's how dominant the Tar Heels were. And it was mostly because the Wolfpack just couldn't get anything going against that now vaunted Carolina defense. Ingram was a big part of that defense. Cormac Ryan was a big part of that defense. Armando Baycott was cleaning up the boards in that game and I think had a block shot. Jalen Withers had a couple of block shots off the bench. And it was just, you know, Carolina had a small lead at halftime, but just really took off in the second half and closed strongly. And the Wolfpack had only 54 points. So it was I think Casey Morcell led them with 12 points against the Tar Heels in that opener. The Heels completely shut down DJ Horn, who, of course, went on to be an all-ACC guard for the Wolfpack, and deservedly so. But he was 2 for 13 from the field in that game in Raleigh. One of his worst games of the season. And, again, that's a theme for Tar Heel opponents, right? Happened to Blake Hinson, happened to Jameer Watkins of Florida State, happened to Ishmael Leggett of Pitt. The Heels done that to a lot of people. They did it to DJ Horn in game 1 during the regular season, which really was a dominant road victory for the Tar Heels.
And then it was 2 weeks ago today, North Carolina playing at home against NC State. The Tar Heels get the win 79-70. Again, Ingram, big this time on the offensive side, 22 points. And the Tar Heels get the win in a game that was very physical. In fact, there was some pushing and shoving. So I wouldn't be too surprised if we saw some more of that coming up later tonight right here in the ACC tournament final. These teams, they probably respect each other, but they don't really like each other, especially when a title is on the line.
Yeah, and I think what's important to remember is that the Wolfpack had the lead at halftime, if I remember correctly, on the Tar Heels in that game at the Smith Center in Chapel Hill. And another part of that to remember is that when the Heels crushed the Pack in Raleigh, that was before Muhammad Diarra and Michael O'Connell became central to what the Wolfpack has done, both here in D.C., but even in some other games late in the regular season. So game 1 of the regular season when the Heels dominated was the earlier version of the Wolfpack. The Heels did win game 2 in Chapel Hill, as you said, 79-70, but it was a much more competitive game. Diarra and O'Connell played, a lot more minutes than they had in the game in Raleigh. DJ Horn went from having that horrible game in Raleigh to putting up 20 points against the Tar Heels in Chapel Hill and being a part of that. I think it was a 45-37 halftime lead for the Wolfpack. So whereas you entered the second half of the game in Raleigh knowing the Heels were going to win, you entered the second half of that game in the Smith Center, which, as you said, was only 2 weeks ago and a lot closer to this new version of the Wolfpack. Starting in that second half, I thought the Pack had a legitimate chance to steal a road victory. Jaden Taylor had a really big game with 22 points. He hit 5 out of 7 threes, probably his biggest three-point explosion of the season in that second game against the Tar Heels. So we'll see where the Wolfpack's offense comes from in round 3, if you will, of State Carolina here in the 2024 basketball season.
King Neptune Restaurant in Wrightsville Beach is the longest-running restaurant in New Hanover County. That's since 1947, and it recently was renovated to an impeccable degree by our good friends Jimmy Galise and his amazing wife, Keaton. Their outstanding chefs offer fresh local seafood, salad options, and creative, tasty variations of pork, beef, and poultry dishes. King Neptune has always been a great choice for dinner and/or drinks, and now it's open for lunch and brunch too. Check out the lunch, brunch, and dinner menus at neptuneswb.com. That's Neptunes with an S, then WB for Wrightsville Beach. Again, the King Neptune Restaurant website is neptuneswb.com.
I tell you, I can't wait. I don't know if I've been this excited for a game in a long, long time. And like you said, it really is a great story. NC State trying to play their 5th game, David, in 5 days and win all 5 of those to get a chance to go on to play. But these guys are used to playing a lot of games back when they were in high school. And, even in the summertime, they're running. They're getting those things going. So I would think, given almost 22 hours before they have to be back at the arena, save for a shoot-around tomorrow morning, that they're going to get every type of pampering and sports medicine advantage that you can get. Carolina will as well. And right now, there is no tomorrow. And that's a pretty dangerous animal when you back them into the corner and saying it doesn't matter. And I have a feeling if any of those Virginia fans aren't humping it back to Albemarle County, they're going to be wearing the red and cheering for NC State, because that's the one thing about the DMV. They will all unite as a group in old ACC style, the anybody but Carolina crowd. So this one, It has all the drama and all the intrigue that you could ever ask for in a final.
I think you're right. It is going to be fun to see how much red is in the stands. Maybe more and more Wolfpack fans scoop up those tickets that are being sold by some of the fans whose teams lost in the semifinals. On the one hand, Mike, you know the deal. College basketball is typically a 2-game-a-week sport. Even if you make the NCAA tournament, you're playing Thursday, Saturday, or Friday, Sunday, right? So, again, 2 games per week. The conference championship event is the only time that you're being asked to play 3 games in 3 days, 4 games in 4 days, or in the Wolfpack's case, 5 games in 5 days. So it is a strain on your body in a different way than anything else you experience in your college career. On the other hand, a lot of these guys will bring up, hey, man, in AAU ball, you know how you're with your travel team and you're in some city far, far away, and because they have to squeeze so many games into so few days and whatever facilities they have available, it is not unusual for them to play multiple games in the same day, or, 4 games over 2 days. Now, that's just AAU ball, obviously a different level of intensity, but these guys are elite athletes. Adrenaline is going to take them quite a long way. It'll be interesting to see what the pace is like, whether the fans of both teams can uplift them. And as you said, not only the fans wearing their team's colors, but I think you're right that UVA fans that hang around might adopt the Wolfpack to maybe give them – the Heels have been incredibly well supported all week here in D.C. The Wolfpack, it's been a little slower build. And again, that's because a week ago, you'd have to be the eternal optimist to think that the number 10 seed Wolfpack had a chance to win 2 games in 2 days, much less 4 and 4 or possibly 5 and 5. Little by little, more and more people are believing, and the Wolfpack players themselves said that they believed even when they got on the plane at the beginning of the week.
Sports gambling now legal in North Carolina. You can't ask for anything better from a bookmaker. This week in the first game, 121 points. The second game, 149 points. Do you expect this to be a high-scoring affair, maybe an over 149 or an under that last number from 2 weeks ago?
I'd probably go under. I always say I wouldn't bet the kids' college tuition fund either way. I'm gonna have to find a new phrase because my kids, as they get older, I don't have any more college tuition payments. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see the pace because obviously the Heels typically like to play at a very quick pace, and not everybody wants to play at that same pace with them. NC State was probably middle of the pack in terms of its pace during the regular season, but generally speaking, the underdog wants fewer possessions, right? The higher possession the game, the more the favorite tends to flush out as the winner. So we'll see what tactics Kevin Keats adopts. But a desperate team is dangerous. A confident, desperate team is even more dangerous. And that's what the Tar Heels are facing in the Wolfpack. Of course, the Wolfpack has a challenge of its own. The Heels are the best defensive team in the ACC, period. They're one of the best defensive teams in the entire country this year. The formula, if there is one, if there's a road to success for the Wolfpack, it's run the Heels off the three-point line. You can't let Cormac Ryan get going or Harrison Ingram or R.J. Davis. Those Heels are almost impossible to beat if they get hot from three-point land. And then the Wolfpack, whether it's DJ Horn, Michael O'Connell, I mentioned Jaden Taylor hit those 5 threes at the Smith Center. Maybe he gets hot from long range. Casey Morsell hasn't had a great year from three-point land, but we've seen it from him at times. Even Mohamed Diarra sometimes can hit some threes as kind of a stretch forward type guy. That's the formula that State would have to follow, to me, if they're going to really post as a 10 seed, literally the lowest seeded team ever to win the ACC championship. It would be a massive upset, but I think the last couple of victories for the Wolfpack were pretty big upsets. This one would just be a little bit bigger.
NC State came back against their opponent on Friday night, Virginia, when they started to go inside. I would think going into their 5th game in 5 days, their legs might not give them the lift to take those threes if they try to depend on the long ball too much. they could get run out of the gym pretty quick. I mean, this really could be Cinderella and the great, you know, coronation of the Wolfpack for the first time since 1987. But it could also be a pretty dramatic beatdown, maybe even on par with what Carolina did to Michigan State back in 2009 in Detroit.
We'll see. It's really hard to predict how things are going to unfold. We know the Tar Heels are going to try to get the ball to Armando Bacot. Right. And Bacot actually this week and much better as a fifth-year player than earlier in his career. When he does get double-teamed, there were a number of times in the Tar Heels win over Pitt where he found the right guy, sometimes an open three-point shooter. So you take away what Bacot does best, but then you give up an open three-pointer to one of the Tar Heels' capable shooters. So the Heels will try to go inside out, and I think you're right. The Wolfpack is going to try to take advantage of DJ Burns' skill set. I mean, Virginia pounds you in the post, and DJ Burns was a ballerina at times when the Wolfpack needed a big bucket. His footwork is immaculate, and his touch is incredibly soft. And when needed, he can pass to an open three-point shooter as well. It's a guessing game. The Heels are the better team. The Heels are the better, more well-rounded team. The Heels are probably the deeper team. The Heels are the fresher team. But, you know, that's why they play the game. The Wolfpack doesn't care about any of the things that I just said. They just want a chance to win a championship.
And they certainly have it. What a tournament so far. We'll crown a champion tonight. For David Glenn, I'm Mike Waddell. We'll be back after tonight's championship game with our final look back at this 2024 ACC tournament. Our coverage brought to you by our foundational partner here on NCSN, the North Carolina Port Council. For now, so long from DC.